need a few seconds for the blue button to become happy. You're live.
Good afternoon and welcome to the Pillar 3 meeting for December. I am Olivia Pearson, Supervisor of College Readiness for Prince George's County Public Schools. And we are joined today by the rest of the Pillar 3 committee, along with some invited guests. And so I will ask our committee members to introduce themselves, starting with the co-chair.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon. Dave Harper, Chesapeake College, Academic Vice President. And I pass to Robin Werner.
Good afternoon. I'm Robin Werner. I'm the CTE Supervisor for Talbot County Public Schools.
Good afternoon, everyone. Kirkland Murray, Workforce Development Director for Anne Arundel County, Maryland, and President of the Maryland Workforce Association.
Hello, Peter Banyas, sophomore at Duke and former Howard County student member of the Board of Education.
Okay, thank you. Welcome. We have some invited guests, both from the community college and from workforce board. So if we have our community college guests, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. Kamari Collins, Vice President for Student Success and Enrollment Management at Chesapeake College.
Hello, everyone. Christy Dreyer, Vice President of Academic Programs at Cecil College and current Chair of the Academic VPs for community colleges across the state.
And hello, I am Dan Schneckenberger. I am the Executive Director of the Upper Shore Workforce Investment Board.
Okay, and I think we also have two guests from the Workforce Board from Salisbury, from Beacon Center, because this afternoon's meeting focuses on enhancing communication and collaboration between workforce boards, community colleges, and K-12 schools.
Yeah, so good afternoon, John Hickman, with Director of Beacon at Salisbury University. We're working with the workforce boards on developing some benchmarks.
Bob Hoffman, I'm the project coordinator here at Beacon, and I work with John.
And Molly Mesnard, Deputy Director of the CTE Committee, which is in the Governor's Workforce Development Board. I'm sorry, I'm a little congested, so.
Coming through loud and clear, Molly.
Thank you. And we have, of course, members from the AIB here. Rachel's?
You got us both today. You get both Rachels. So I am the other Rachel, Rachel Amstutz, the Director of Policy here at the Accountability and Implementation Board. And we're very excited to have our Executive Director, Rachel Heiss, here as well.
Hi, everyone. Glad to be back. Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you. So, Rachel A., are you able to give us any updates for Pillar 3 from the AIB?
You got it. So I recognize that our agenda is fairly packed today and we have a lot of guests. So I really want to save time and space for you guys. As you know, I could drone on and on about great things happening in Maryland and with the blueprint. But I'm going to just focus on two and then open it if you have any questions for us. So basically, I want to talk about the updates surrounding the Blueprint 2024 planning, just to give you everybody a little bit of information. The LEAs have received their planning template. It is very different this year. It's a much more streamlined process. It went from 160 some questions to under 30. One question is due in the middle of March and the rest are due in May. So we have a bifurcated submission process with a huge emphasis on strategic planning, and really this work is complex. So we need to allow time for systems to really engage in that work. A lot of technical assistance is planned and coming out. The first one that we can commit to is that we have standing office hours weekly with our blueprint coordinators, and it will be continued through the entire process through the submission. time frame, and at times that may become focused, like, hey, we need a pillar 1 check-in real quick, or we need a pillar 2. And at other times when things are deeper, we'll be having a technical assistance session on very specific topics. MSDE and the AIB are collaborating on the technical assistance plan and the calendar, and then also in the near future, the review process. So we solicited a fair amount of stakeholder feedback, and we got great feedback from around the state on how to make this process smoother, easier, and more reflective of the work underway, to give space for innovation and space for what's happening. So we are excited about the changes and always open to more feedback. But the timeline, every LEA will submit their 2024 blueprint plan by March 15th. And so that's very similar to last year. And then we anticipate that we can speed up the review process. The next thing I wanted to mention specific to Pillar 3 is that we are planning a technical assistance session in February. This is like hot off the presses, and I haven't sent the email yet, and I'm going to send the email any minute now. If you are connected to career counseling, you'll be getting an email with some updates and some information, as well as a save the date for Friday, February 9th, for an in-person technical assistance session for folks from all around the state who are working with career counseling to join us at the Maritime Institute. We're focusing on best practices in career counseling, both from a national and already in place lens, but then also our LEAs are doing a great job right now figuring this out. And we want to hear, what have you thought about? What have you tried? What's worked? What hasn't? Because we can all learn from all of those things. So we're excited to partner with the CTE Committee, MSDE, Maryland Workforce Association, and Beacon to make sure that this is a really engaging and meaningful and timely session for everybody around the state implementing career counseling. Those are the two biggest things I can bring to you right now. Are there any other questions I could answer about Blueprint or what's happening at the AIB?
Wow, that's a lot.
It was,
Thank
and I went
you.
fast.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I don't think we have additional questions right now. We may come back, but thank you for providing these updates so we can at least mark our calendars.
Absolutely.
David, can you also add to note, along with Beacon, it would be the Education Cooperative that will be also presenting at this event. Thanks.
Yep, got it. And just to note that always we can add, edit, and delete as we try to keep a clear record of our discussion. Thanks. Okay.
Thank you. Okay, so after our last meeting's discussion, we received some feedback regarding the emphasis on college readiness versus career readiness. I know our last meeting, we talked a lot about the CCR benchmark and the research study. And so we really, of course, appreciate the feedback and want to just come back to, this focus on college and career readiness and making sure that it is synonymous with each other. And that's, part of the reason that we have so many different folks as part of our committees to really make sure that, we're discussing college and career readiness in tandem. And so I know Rachel H has agreed to come to really give us some additional support and dialogue around that.
Sure, thank you. And happy to be here. And you all had a very robust discussion at your last meeting. And I think that's great. That's exactly what we want to be happening with the advisory committees. And also receiving feedback from the public and stakeholders who are engaged in the work and And I think it's helpful to know when perhaps there's misunderstanding and miscommunication. And so I'm very happy to talk about college and career readiness because I think this is really, as we refer to it, AIB and MSD, it's kind of the North Star of the blueprint, which is that we want every student to be college and career ready before they leave high school, and ideally by the end of 10th grade. And in this college and career readiness has a lot of different meanings to it. And so from the blueprint's perspective, what this college and career readiness standard is intended to be is it's intended to represent what every single student needs to know and be able to do to be successful in whatever path they choose, either starting, in 10th or 11th grade or post-secondary, depending on when they achieve the college and career ready standard. But what every single student needs to be successful, regardless of what path they choose, whether they choose to go straight into college, whether they choose to go straight into a career, or whether they choose to do some combination. And I'll share with you, I've heard some folks say this, and I think it's right. We could call it the career standard because college is the pathway to a career. It's not, college is not, I mean, for some people it is their career if you become faculty or whatever, but, college is a pathway to a career, just like a CTE program, an apprenticeship, and other credentials. And so, really we could call it career ready. If you're going to leave out anything, you could leave out the college part, but we don't want to leave any of it out. We want to make sure we're preparing students for whichever path they want to select, to begin in high school and to pursue, rigorously in post-secondary. And so it is absolutely an and. I think one of the some of the feedback from the study that was done is that it doesn't incorporate enough information about what skills and knowledge are needed for I'm going to call them career pathways. And I think that is a it wasn't in some of the scope of work of the study, but it's both AIB and MSDE recognize that it's needed. And some of the I think the discussion that the AIB had at its November meeting and that the State Board of Education has had over the past couple of months is really focused on sort of like, we are where we are, and so what are we going to do about a CCR standard now? And then what additional work needs to be done, both to validate that it's the right standard or not, and also gather additional information to ensure that the standard is what it needs to be. But at the end of the day, it's not just about the standard itself, although that's important. The real work is, once we have a standard, is making sure that all of our instructional systems and curriculum, all the way back to pre-kindergarten and kindergarten, are aligned so that we're giving every student the opportunity to become college and career ready and meet the standard by the end of 10th grade and even sooner. So it's really, we've got to get the standard. We want to get it right. We get it as right as we can get it right now, and do the rest of the work to make sure that what we're teaching and the sequencing of the teaching and the quality of the instructional materials are all aligned with what we want students to be able to achieve and know and be able to do by 10th grade in English, language arts, and math. And then and then there's the additional hard work around, and I know you all have plans for these topics in future meetings. What does the support pathway look like for students who aren't able to meet the standard yet? Because again, the North Star is by the time you leave high school, we definitely want you to meet the standard. We don't want to be sending kids out into the world when we know that we haven't equipped them with the basic skills and knowledge that they need to be successful. And so what does the support pathway look like? How do we engage students who aren't able to meet the standard yet in being able to acquire those skills, but yet also be motivated to continue on because they are also see what their goal is, what potential pathway they want to pursue. And really, I think the key, and you're going to talk about career counseling, is sort of to align the counseling side of it, which is critical because students have to know what, based on what their interest is, and then also okay, maybe you're interested in being an engineer, but you're not but you also need to understand what that path requires and be prepared to be on that path. And so I think the counseling piece of this is critical. And so the way you all have sort of organized your work, I think, is just spot on. And then of course we know the post CCR pathways themselves, with the 4-year, so if you do want to go into engineering, you need to go to a 4-year institution, right? Or a 2-year that is articulated to a 4-year degree. And so you could start on that path, as soon as even 10th grade, but 11th grade and sort of be earning college credits or, gaining the workforce experience, hopefully, we have an engineering apprenticeship in the future, which might also be tied to a 4-year degree. I mean, I think as we're learning more together, we're realizing that there's more and more, the way the blueprint is written, it's sort of like this pathway or this pathway or this pathway, but really it's like a circle almost of pathways that intersect, and maybe circle is not the right shape, but I mean, you could be on a 4-year college pathway because you want to be an engineer, but you could also be in a career pathway where you're gaining work experience in different engineering areas, because there's lots of different kinds of engineering, so that you can start to identify which type of engineering you might be interested in. Is it civil? Is it mechanical? Is it, I don't know. I've exhausted my engineering knowledge, but you get the point. So I'm gonna stop talking. Happy to answer any questions and look forward to the discussion.
Thank you so much. I think that gives us a great leeway into our discussion. And so I'm excited about all of our special guests that we have here to talk about how we are enhancing our collaboration between K-12, workforce boards, community colleges, along with, again, these pathways. And so, excuse me, I am going to just really start the discussion. And I don't know if Dave, I think I have a sneeze coming on. If you want to just kind of jump in as to, how we are reimagining our partnerships across organizations.
Olivia and Dave, before you jump in, can I just ask Rachel one question before we move on? Rachel, since I appreciate the update that you gave us, and just kind of, that was a great summary to a lot of our feedback and conversation from our last meeting. But one thing that I have been thinking about since our last meeting was when we were discussing the fact that the students who did not attend college were not part of the empirical study. That to me is really concerning because it's a large group of students. So that's a big piece of data that's missing that really aligns to career, because if we are to assume that a lot of those students did go to careers, we're missing data on those students. So is there a plan, maybe this is more for MSC, but is there a plan for us to have better data for those students who go more college, since it was kind of highlighted that that was missing?
Thank you, Robin, for asking. And we have had conversations with MSDE around next steps that would include trying to do something similar to what was done for the academic courses, and to look at some of the different types of career pathways and try to determine what, I mean, ultimately what you need to get at is what are the prerequisite skills and knowledge that are needed to go into that pathway. So, what is the prerequisite math knowledge that you need to on the college side, for college algebra, for example. And so some of that work it wasn't done as part of that study either. So it's not just on the career side where there's some data lacking, and some of that work on the math side is underway right now. It just got started, and there are folks from community math instructors from community colleges and K-12 are participating on a group that are starting to dig in on some of that work that wasn't done as part of the study. And then on the career side, like what are the prerequisite ELA and math skills that are needed for different, types of career pathways. And particularly in math, we know that depending on the pathway, you might need more statistical skills, rather than calculus. And so that kind of work is going to be happening. It's a little more, it's less straightforward than the academic side, just because there's more information available around, so it's a little more challenging, but I think I can speak for MSDE and AIB that we recognize that work needs to be, that it was missing and that it needs to be done.
Thank you. I appreciate you adding that part. Thanks.
Could I ask another question on that front to Rachel? I have 3 questions. The first one, I really appreciate you coming and sharing that. Very, very helpful. First thing, one of the things we were talking about last time was that you framed this as sort of a North Star, right? That this is our goal. We want to have all of our students have these competencies. And I'm right there with you. But then the way that it seems like the statute's framed is this is a gatekeeper, right? This is, if students want to take AP classes or go into CTE programs or dual enroll at a university, they would have to have met this standard. So I'm curious how you and the rest of the AIB committee think about this as, is this one, just a goal that we're trying to have all of our students attain, or is it really a gatekeeper that we want to have? Because some of the discussion we had last time was, if students are on the path towards reaching that level of readiness and could benefit from a CTE program to really unleash their, self-ownership, drive for learning, we wouldn't want to have this standard get in the way of them being able to achieve that standard, if that makes any sense. So are you thinking of this as something that students need to meet in order to go forward with those special parts of education, or is this just a idyllic goal that you're hoping to have them achieve?
So, Peter, thank you for that question. I'm really, really glad you asked it, because the intent of the blueprint is actually the opposite of gatekeeping. And, quite frankly, unfortunately, that occurs now in our system because students don't all have an equal or equitable, and I'm going to say both, opportunity to gain the skills and knowledge that they need to be successful. And so the blueprint, the whole intent of this 10th grade standard is to make sure that the instructional system, all back, as I talked about, aligned all the way back to pre-K, is all lined up to set students up for success, to actually be able to have those skills and knowledge by 10th grade, so that they're prepared to take those AP courses and, get a 3, at least a 3. To be successful in a college credit course, and to be able to do what they need to do on a career pathway. So it's the opposite is the intent. In the short term, students, the post-CCR pathways are available to all students, regardless of whether they meet the standard or not. That being said, the community, different school systems have different rules about who can take an AP course, who can dual enroll in this course or that course. And the intent of the blueprint was to say, ultimately, when it's, and what the law says is at a certain point, the AIB kind of says that, okay, the blueprint's fully implemented and certain pieces of it go into effect that aren't in effect right now. But the whole intent is to say, okay, once we say that, anybody who meets this standard, they get to choose their pathway. You can't put any other requirements on choosing a pathway. The students get to choose the pathway, not, not other factors that might affect whether they can pursue what they would like to pursue.
So for that respect, just so I understand, you're saying that right now, different school districts could have different types of arbitrary restrictions on what students might be able to pursue. But after Blueprint is determined fully implemented, then it would standardize that standard as the CCR readiness, and then no other district can vary from that. Is that right?
In terms of giving students that opportunity, yes. Yes.
Gotcha. Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
And that's where I want to interrupt just here before we get too far away from the point, Peter. Just for those who weren't present in our last meeting, a lot of what we talked about was if the CCR standard is a door that opens for students, a single door, college and career ready. One of the things that the study has done so far, whereas there was an MCAP assessment, more or less a single assessment, is add a second key or suggest adding a second key, the second key of GPA. So now you have more than one key to the same door. And that's what the current MOU that's signed between the superintendents and the community college presidents in the state does, is it adds multiple keys, because it's very difficult for any single standardized assessment to capture all the different aptitudes that students can demonstrate from college and career readiness. And so giving students more keys to that same door could increase opportunity and reduce it being a gateway or a gatekeeper of sorts. I don't know if I said that right, but that's.
I think you did. And if I could just add one more thing to your question. I think it's always this challenge of, you've probably heard the phrase access and success. And so, we want to make sure that we're giving students access to these pathways, but we also want to make sure that we're preparing them to be successful in those pathways. And what's really incumbent upon us is for students who don't meet the CCR standard, whatever it ends up being, that we put our resources and efforts into figuring out what the right supports are to help them become college and career ready before they leave high school and have opportunities to participate in portions of the post-CCR pathways while they are on the support pathway. And I think that's some really important work that I know some folks are thinking deeply about, but I think that's where we really need to focus is like, how are we going to set this up for students who aren't college and career ready? And how do we support them and give them access to the post-CCR pathways, but also the ability to be successful in those pathways?
Gotcha. I appreciate that. The second question, if I may. The second question that was brought up in the consultant case was figuring out where to draw the line, right? What that GPA minimum should be, what those standardized test scores should be for the cutoffs. And they helped us sort of analyze that from a perspective of we can increase the number of students getting through, right? Or we could lower it very arbitrarily based on where we draw that line. And where we draw that line can change what our false positives are and our false negatives when we compare those predictive data points to the validating ones, the ones where are they completing their first semester of college. I'd be curious to know how the AIB is thinking about that in terms of, are we using those metrics once students are in college, are they doing well? Are we using those metrics as points that we're trying to find high school-based statistics that accurately predict those outcomes, and that's what we're drawing the line that's what we're drawing the line based on? Or are we drawing that line based on trying to let more students through? Are we trying to draw the line based on what people that are way smarter than me in education determine that's a good level of competence on an exam? Right? Because there's a lot of different ways where you could draw that line. I'm curious how you guys are thinking about that.
Well, I don't want to speak for the AIB per se, but I will say that I think our focus is on trying to make sure that we know what students need to know and be able to be successful in that initial credit-bearing college course or the initial stages of a career pathway or a certificate program, be it credit or non-credit, and make sure that what they need to know and be able to do are embedded in our curriculum and our standards for K-10, K-12, and then that we're measuring, whether students are achieving that, have acquired those skills and knowledge. To the extent that, and so that I would say that's what the blueprint law envisioned as the way that the standard would be set. I think the predictive work is interesting, and I think part of the next steps of once the state board makes its decision will be to do some longitudinal data analysis to see how well the prediction lines up with the reality of how students whether students are successful based on the standard. And so we've had discussions with MSDE about the need for that work also. And I think that's definitely part of the next steps is, whatever they adopt, and then sort of looking at the data to see if what happens sort of validates what was predicted to happen.
Gotcha. I appreciate
that. Makes sense.
And one thing I'd like to raise on that point is I think it's really important that we're careful to get that right now, because if we then say it's implemented and then start having this be, even if we don't want it to be a gateway, it will be a door of some form that will make the data align with what we've drawn the line at, right? Because once students are deemed not college and career ready and then don't have access to those special programs, they will be less successful in college and careers and future paths, because it's going to cause those pathways to diverge. And then that'll lead to that data confirming us as being right, regardless of whether we were really right, if that makes sense. So just want to throw that out there.
Yeah, I
But
think I know what you mean. I do want to just say one thing, just to make sure everyone's aware of this. The new standard that's being considered, regardless of what the board decides, more students will be considered college and career ready than are under the interim standard. So this new standard is expanding the number of students that will meet the standard and, immediately, be able to uh, enroll in these post CCR pathways. Although, as I said before, those pathways are not shut off for anyone right now, based on the CCR standard. Then there might be other things that are, preventing students from being able to enroll in those programs.
gotcha. Yeah. And I mean, I don't speak for everybody, but at least for me, my goal is not that everyone's deemed CCR, right? I don't necessarily want us to lower the bar. My goal is just that we don't have false negatives where we're incorrectly saying a student is not prepared and then we're, setting them up for failure.
Yeah.
Okay, last question. I know I'm taking way too much time, so I apologize and I appreciate your patience.
Peter, we need to move. We need to move
Not a
beyond.
problem. We'll
We've
move
got a
on.
lot of
Let's
guests
move on.
here and a robust agenda. So with apologies, I'm pushing us beyond that.
Sounds good.
Yep. Olivia, we do have a lot of guests from the Workforce Investment Board and from community colleges. And the meat of our conversation scheduled today was for how can we enhance our workforce, our MOU partnerships. What springs to mind is what incremental improvements, what challenges were faced, and what will we do in the next MOU cycle. So Dan had a couple of points to make. Olivia, do you want to say a couple of words on that before we go forward?
No, I want to jump right in. I think that I'd love to hear what Dan has to say, and I think through our conversation we can kind of unravel some of these pieces we've been thinking about.
All right, I guess I'm up, but hey, thank you for the opportunity to talk from the Upper Shore perspective of Blueprint. We have 5 counties, of which the Upper Shore WIB and Chesapeake College have executed MOUs. We executed them fairly early in the year. We tried to hit the March 15th date of last year. The AIB has done subsequent reviews of our MOUs and made some suggestions. So there's some addendums that we will do to our MOUs to become further compliant with what the AIB has suggested we add. We took our 5 counties, and all 5 counties have made decisions that they wanted to hire the career coaches. And so our finance agreement allowed the bulk of the money to go to the 5 schools. We have kept a portion for the Upper Shore WIB and the Chesapeake College to do their pieces that are embedded in the MOU. I would say the money flow for our 5 counties is working very well. I know that's not the case around the state, but we're very happy with that. We have a good relationship with our education system. And one of the things we've started to do is meet regularly. We started doing this in October, all 5 counties. We recently met December 5th, and we have a meeting on the schedule just before this Educators Cooperative Career Coach tutorial on February 9th. And basically what we talk about in those meetings are what are the challenges they're seeing as they're getting their career coaches up to speed. They're starting to integrate with the students, what they want to show them into, what's going to go on with their 6th graders, preliminary this year, and how they want to really broaden that out into next school year. As all of us know, the MOUs are for 3 years. We expect some legislative changes to extend that 3-year period out, or at least I'm hopeful on that. I know at least one bill's been introduced to address the long-term funding of Pillar 3. So we'll pay attention to that very much. But right now, we still have a 3-year MOU, and some of the things I've advised our 5 counties to work on is, okay, if we have, let's just say we had 3 years, what are we doing with our 11th and 12th and 10th graders who will not get the full benefit of this blueprint bill only because they're too old. They're too old to get the full effects. So I think a lot of our counties are really taking a hard look at youth apprenticeships. You know, what could be set up currently for 11th graders next year that would pivot into their senior year. And ultimately, there's good activity in all 5 counties to integrate with businesses and other government agencies to talk about youth apprenticeship and how it will help them meet the goals that are implemented in the blueprint law, the 45% goal by 2031. And we've been having some discussions on industry recognized credentials. We actually just had a more robust discussion with the Governor's Workforce Development Board. Rachel Parker, their executive director, came to one of my board meetings last night, and we discussed that, how multiple groups are going to work on these IRCs, what's going to be accepted through the AIB as part of that benchmark to get fully compliant with the law. And the Maryland Workforce Association is very much interested in this piece. And as a workforce investment board, we obviously look at industry recognized credentials, very important to us with the workforce training funds that we implement to individuals. So that's a discussion to be had further down. And, I'm making sure that our 5 counties who do offer industry recognized credentials through their technical high schools are heard and have the opportunity to take credit for things they've been doing very well, and that these are credentials that all of us would agree are good for career-ready individuals when they graduate. That being said, one area that has come up, like anything, a new program, you can't anticipate everything. One county has said, hey, we have a lot of students interested in youth apprenticeship. They have transportation barriers, which are to be expected across the state. But one barrier they have, even before they get to the transportation barriers, a number of these juniors and seniors do not even have a driver's license. They do not have driver's ed either available to them or in a cost-effective way. And some of the questions coming out is, how can we help pay some of our students who are interested in youth apprenticeships and get their driver's license, so then we can kind of move forward solving the transportation barrier that they may have to get to an employer. So that's something we're going to continue to talk about to see what we can do. One county may be able to braid some funds through some other organizations, but having 5 counties, they may not be applicable for all 5. So these are things that we're going to continue to talk about. Our WIB, as part of our MOU, has also offered global facilitator developer certification for our career coaches, and all new hires have been offered that, and they've all accepted that, and most of them are pretty well through the process of getting that certification.
Can you pause? I'm sorry. You're saying a lot of great stuff, and I don't know where to jump in. So
Okay.
can we go back to the driver's licenses?
Sure.
Can we go back there? And then I want to hear a little bit more about the certification. And I don't know if you have more to say about everything as a whole, but I do want to go back there. So I don't know if you want to go back now or you want to
No,
say some more and then we can go back.
No, we can go back now. The driver's license piece has recently come up in the last few weeks. So I think any high school that is involved in Blueprint now is got the message that, hey, we need to really engage our folks in youth apprenticeship opportunities. For example, in Dorchester County, there are 23 registered youth apprenticeship opportunities for Dorchester County students. And before Blueprint, they probably only had 6 or 7 takers for those opportunities. Now with Blueprint and the career coaches pitching this idea, there's a lot more interest. Maybe they didn't know about it. Maybe they didn't have a champion for it, but they're getting a lot more interest. And the interest level is such that, hey, we may have 20 to 25 kids that want to go forward and fill these slots, which is a good problem to have. Maybe half of them don't even have a driver's license because they can't afford driver's ed. It's not offered free in the schools. And maybe that's just a barrier that they haven't solved within their family. So go ahead.
Well,
Our career
I think
coaches are just coming back and saying, is there an opportunity to find some funding to train, pay for the training for them to be able to get their, driver's license, their Class C driver's license. So then at some point, whether it's a family car or they could purchase a car to be able to get transportation to the employer of record for the youth apprenticeship. So I would think that barrier exists in a lot of areas. I would think Baltimore City has that issue. So I'm not saying it's a major hurdle, but these are the kind of things as our folks start digging in and really trying to meet the requirements of Blueprint, these are some of the things that we're coming up with from that standpoint.
I appreciate that. And I wanted to kind of slow us down a little bit, just so that we could really talk about it, because this is the first time I've heard a potential solution being assisting the students with the driving courses. I've heard more about public transportation or finding some kind of busing system that can be used in some of the other areas. So I just think that that's a great idea. And if we're thinking about, all the ways to address the transportation questions, that I think that's a great resolution or first step, right? Because, there's other steps. So it's getting them a license and then getting them access to a car. But a license is something that, if they don't have a car right away, that's something that they carry with them. And that's, something that'll help them later on in life. And so I really,
Exactly.
I appreciate that idea. So I just wanted to make sure, I was understanding and hearing and, highlighting that a little more.
Mm-hmm. And I think your other question was on IRCs.
Well, it was about something that you mentioned, and I wanted to just make sure I heard it correctly, about the career coaches being hired and they're going through their own some kind of certification or training. And so I just wanted.
Yeah, when we were talking with all 5 counties and developing our MOUs, there had been quite a bit of discussion, even in MWA, on is there a career coaching certification that would allow all these new folks that are being hired, including a couple people from the US WIB staff, to come up with I'll even call that an industry recognized credential for career coaching, global facilitator. And it's come up in discussion amongst all the various WIBs. And it was always something that, yeah, we'd like to pursue that. Let's take a look at some more things. I believe Robin was another person who said, hey, here I found some, we can actually take this online. We don't have to wait to see if another group's going to offer this for a bigger group. MWA now does offer certification training with the global facilitator. We just moved a little quicker because they were hiring coaches this summer. We had new employees as early as August, and we wanted to move quicker to get this worthy certification. It's 120 hours to do that. So all of us, whether it be college with their higher US WIB and the number of career coaches we have spread out over the 5 counties, they would all have the same training. So we'd all be working from the same page.
Dan, I
so
see
to
Rachel
speak.
has her hand up.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. I just wanted to let everyone know that when the Kerwin Commission was discussing the career counseling and as it was moving through the process, there was a discussion of a separate certification for the career coaches because it's a different skill set than guidance counseling per se. And not intended, I know this is not intended to replace guidance counselors, that it's a different skill set and that that it should have a different certification pathway. So I think you all are absolutely on the right track with that.
Mhm.
So,
So we're moving forward
Dan,
with that.
Dan, I want to let Kirk speak. Okay. He's got
Okay.
his hand up.
so thank you, Dave. Dan is correct. The local workforce boards are looking at what credentialing for career coaching will those career coaches need. The GCDF is the first certification we looked at, but other areas are doing some innovative things. Our colleagues in Montgomery County, they've actually gone and created a registered apprenticeship for their career coaches. So we're skinning this at multiple different ways, but definitely making sure that there is a credential around career counseling. A lot of the individual, at least I can speak for Anne Arundel, and Dan can speak for the Upper Shore, but a lot of the people that we've hired to be our career coaches have worked in school systems, have worked with students, have some form of workforce development, but we wanted to make sure they all had the same skills. So they're coming at the same level. So that's why Maryland Workforce Association has sponsored doing trainings, and we're going to continue to do them. We did a first group back in November, and we're planning to continue throughout the year as local workforce boards bring on their career coaches to make sure, as Rachel said, that philosophy or that want of them having a credential, all of the career coaches will have that.
Thank you. I see Robin has her hand up. I just want to throw something in there as I see we're talking about school counselors, and I share an office suite with our school counseling team, and I want to just make sure we highlight that they are no longer called guidance counselors. They are professional school counselors, and I just want to make sure that we are addressing them as such, as we know they have such a pivotal role in supporting our students. Go ahead, Robin.
I just wanted to add, so our 2 career counselors just completed or are completing their GCDF training. It was definitely more than a notion. It while they were trying to do that, while like getting acclimated with their new schools and students and teachers. So one thing that we're finding this year to do this right, it was going to take time. So this year has been our whole, what I've been telling them, our intake year. I was really hesitant to jump into, a specific curriculum or plan without really getting an idea of what that training looks like and all the things that come with it, and just really going off of their expertise. But one thing that we found out through this is that it does require recertification, and that recertification is different than our other certified staff in schools. Like usually we think of recertification in public education as it comes to our continuing ed credits. Those are, I don't want to say that they are easy to access, but there's a lot more opportunities for them that are usually even offered through MSCE, through the school system. Teachers do not usually have to worry about any costs associated with them, and districts can easily budget for them because of all of the access to our community colleges and local colleges, and then also MSCE credits as well. So one thing that has come up that we really weren't anticipating with this was, and we talked about this in our last meeting on the Upper Shore, is that there's 75 hours that are required within, I believe it's 5 years, for them to research for their GCDF. And really the way that from what I've read, is intended, it's not like you wait until year 4 and try to get these 75 hours. The expectation is that you are continuously learning as you go so that you're staying up to date on all of these best practices. So one thing that we're having to do is kind of pivot to how can we support our career counselors, because it's not just any random 75 hours. It goes along with the GCDF framework. And I believe that there are 12, I don't want to say pillars, but like 12 standards. And you have to be aligned to those 12 standards. And some of this could be costly depending on what it is, like attending conferences and things like that. It's a different way of maintaining certification that LEAs are accustomed to. So I think that's one thing that we're trying to plan accordingly. For example, those of us, a lot of my colleagues in CTE went to the ACTE conference recently. It's a national conference. They had a lot on career counseling that was there. That's a great avenue for our career counselors to go to get more hours. It's just that's something that costs a lot of money because those are usually out of state. You have travel expenses, but we are all working together to plan accordingly. While we were actually at that conference, we were talking through of, could we put this in our Perkins grant? That's aligned to Blueprint because it's aligned to this recertification. So I just wanted to throw out, like, we are learning as we go through this. Our career counselors in Talbot actually had a meeting with our professional school counselors today, and we are working on a plan to move forward of what are you all doing? What can we do to help support that so that we're not working on the same thing at the same time and doing too much work? Like, how can we work smarter and not harder? And we have a really great relationship in those two areas of working together in our two departments. So I just want to throw that out there about the training. And, I'm glad that we made the decision to do that in the beginning of the year so that they could get all that information before they move forward on making decisions in our county.
Awesome. Thank you. Kirkland?
So this is one of the reasons why MWA is trying to look and build up our training arm, is so that, people can get these recertifications right here in Maryland, instead of having to travel to different states or going to different conferences and things here. So I think this is an added value that MWA is bringing to this, and be able to provide those opportunities for those trainings. But Robert, I'm just curious, why wouldn't this cost come out of Blueprint?
Which do you mean, like with our local Blueprint funds, or? Well, not that it necessarily couldn't come out of Blueprint, but I think it's harder for us to budget, I guess is my point with it, because we are so used to the standard CPD credits where it's easier for a LEA to budget accordingly, because it's usually the way teachers are getting credits is usually, like I said, through MSCE or local. So we have some control over like what those cost. We can plan a little bit better. But with these, because it's and there could be a variety of ways that they get it. If a career counselor comes to me and says, I would like to do this and it might be something that's local. Like I was just throwing an example of a conference just because we learned a lot there from states that had some well-developed programs. It could just be harder for us to plan accordingly, like with our budgets, because there's so many options that aren't usually available for our teacher certification, if that makes sense. So not that we wouldn't be able to put it with Blueprint costs. It's just, it was one of those things that came up with our Upper Shore meeting was we just need to be a little bit more cognizant of like how those costs could vary and how we can plan accordingly so that that's budgeted properly for our staff. And also making sure our career counselors know, like, you can't wait until the end. Like, this is something we're going to have to plan out over 5 years of how many hours you intend on getting done and how do you plan on doing that so that we can plan our funds accordingly.
Makes sense.
Olivia, the only other point I'll add before I stop is, as Robin said, we're making a lot of progress putting a framework to really move forward. And I'm going to encourage all 5 counties. I said your career counseling, in my opinion, must touch on areas where we know there are positive job outlooks in our areas. Where are the jobs? Let's be sure that, you know, the exposure is being given to students that, hey, these are careers that are right here. They need people. And honestly, we're also very interested in the dual enrollment piece. For example, we need hundreds of welders on the Upper Shore. And now there might be an opportunity for a 10th, 11th, or 12th grader to take welding certifications as part of the CCR plan and get some of these before they even graduate. So they become eminently more employable as they graduate. They can certainly take more at Chesapeake or Warwick or whatever their choice is, but these are areas that I'm going to stress that, hey, how do we make sure that we are developing this youth pipeline in demand industries?
Thank you, Dan. And I just want to
love
acknowledge,
it.
if I may, just to acknowledge how this is. Sorry, Olivia, how this is coming in some ways full circle, even as we have
Absolutely. I think we're about to say the same thing. So I will yield the floor to you.
Sorry, Olivia.
No,
just to say, Christy's raised her hand at the opportune time because we began the call talking about dual emphasis on college and career, and the career coaching effort and the MOU is integral to that. And Christy, you wanted to speak.
Yeah, I think, Dan, I couldn't have asked for a better intro. So thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Because I think community colleges are poised to really help with the career aspect and the credentials. I love that you commented, Dan, about clearly identifying or defining what industry recognized credentials are. I think that's really important. And I think knowing community colleges, that's what we focused on. We focused on workforce programs and or academic programs that really not only result in the degree or our certificate, but industry recognized credentials, which are mobile for students and really valuable more than just an immediate region. So I think that, you know, we're really poised to not only, because the high schools are only going to have the capacity to do so much with workforce. And I think the community colleges are here to really help with that workforce and help build that workforce up. We do it now. And I think we have the capacity to expand. So yeah, we are, I think we're all in, and I think we're a great partner with all of them and working on it. Yeah, I think, Dave, I think you and I were on the same wavelength. So Dan, thank you for that intro.
Thank you, Dr. Truck. Thank you. We have, I'm trying, as we wrap toward the conclusion at 4 o'clock, we have themes emerging, and I'm happy to edit, but they've included those partnerships born from the MOU, the Workforce Investment Board, LEA, community colleges, the CCR standard itself, which is designed to increase access. And I just want to invite Dr. Collins, who may have a point to say on increased access.
Yeah, it was just wondering, in terms of when we talk about access and we talk about the opportunity to use the GPA along with the CCR assessments, what happens to that chunk of students who don't hit either the GPA or the CCR assessments? Part of my question comes from, I come from Massachusetts, where our assessment similar process was put into place, and there were a number of students who did not meet the assessment standard and kind of were in that hamster wheel, so to speak, all the way through high school. And in some instances, never hit the mark and ended up finishing with a certificate of attendance from high school versus their high school diploma. So I just have some concerns, and I'm sure maybe there's conversations happening, but I do want to make sure that we don't forget that group of students who, if they don't meet that mark, I guess the way I'm understanding it is they won't have the opportunity to benefit from all these wonderful things that Blueprint is able to provide. There might be some of that workforce and career readiness pieces that they're exposed to that really could spark, their interest and help them get to where they want to be. So I just feel like that's a really important component that we need to make sure we keep on the forefront of that. It could potentially be a large group of students that don't meet that CCR standard.
Yeah, I guess from the LEA's perspective, that's exactly what we're focused on as well. And so understand we don't want the students on a hamster wheel either. We want to make sure that they are able to move forward. And so I think as Rachel H. stated earlier in the meeting, that's a lot of where our work is going to be, is thinking about and developing these support pathways that allow students to progress and give them kind of what support they need and not hold them back from anything.
Sure.
So we are inching, I think, towards that. I think every iteration of the benchmark, and as we continue to think strategically in our districts, we're learning more and able to really think about it very strategically, intently.
Thank you. So,
Kirk and Christy Dreyer, please.
So, Dr. Collins, I really appreciate you saying that, because that's my biggest concern on that there's some students who aren't going to meet this criteria and not be able to take advantage. So I've been thinking a lot about this too, and we've been talking about this in Anne Arundel County. And we feel that with career coaching and helping students to identify what occupations they may want to go into, and helping them to prepare academically and for a post-CCR pathway that align to those opportunities. I mean, where I keep hearing saying that you have to pass college algebra, but if you're looking to not go to college and not looking to go into a career that you need this, so you're going to prevent that student from taking opportunities because it's not in their interest, it's not what's exciting them, and things like that. So I think that I really hope that we continue to talk about this and really find a way to really make sure that students are prepared to go to students are able to identify an occupation early enough in high school or in middle school so that they can then be prepared to go into that occupation, both academically and with that career readiness. And I hope when people are talking about career readiness, they're also not forgetting those essential workplace skills, those soft skills too, because that's what we who work with businesses, as local workforce boards, the reason why we're involved in this is because our relationship with businesses. I mean, we are the ones with the most intimate relationship with businesses and know what they need. Even when you're talking about these industry recognized credentials, it's the local workforce boards that know this. We're the ones that provide a lot of this information. And if we're doing our jobs correctly, we're partnering with the community colleges to make sure that they are teaching what's in demand and that their curriculums align with business needs. So I think this is a conversation we're going to keep coming back to, because Dr. Collins, I'm glad you said it, because that was my biggest concern, is that you're going to be leaving kids behind. And kids who can be successful, but they're not going to have the opportunities.
So I'm going to build off of that. I absolutely agree. And I think Dave and I have talked about this multiple times. which is why I think we need multiple measures for career and college readiness. It cannot just be a test or a GPA, but there are multiple measures, because you will lose people. You will lose young people and people who could have really strong, viable careers who don't have a 3.0. So I think that that's really a really key point. The other two quick points I'll mention is that community colleges can be a great partner in helping create these support pathways. We do it all the time with students and build students up. So I think we can help with that. And the last thing that's a totally random thought, which I think can be really helpful, is community colleges also can really help explore careers. Running summer camps for middle schoolers or high schools, allowing them to be immersed in a career for a week with discipline experts. We have criminal justice, visual communications, and healthcare could be a great way to help immerse young people in careers and really let them see what they might be able to do or want to do. There's a lot of points real quickly, but I know we're running out of time, so I'll stop.
Robin. Thank you, Dr. Schreier. Robin, you're muted.
Shoot. I'm finding my mute button today too. So I just wanted to be really quick with this. That's a great point that everyone has just made. And one thing I want to point out, and I know I said this in the last meeting, but I just think I need to echo it again. Although GPA is on the table for being an avenue, and like Kirk said, if students are interested in those classes, that could be a barrier. This is where I think there is a misalignment here, because those students haven't even had the opportunity. If they're in 9th and 10th grade, they might not even have an opportunity to take a CTE class that may be what they are interested in according to their career counseling. So if they have career counseling in 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th grade, and they've said that they want to go into carpentry, they haven't taken a carpentry class yet, because in Maryland, in 9th and 10th grade, most kids don't have much freedom in their schedule. They might have a little bit of room for an elective. The majority of their schedule is dictated to them off of graduation requirements that, quite frankly, usually are leading to a college track. So that GPA is kind of skewed in 9th and 10th grade, because that is where they're taking their required classes that align to when they take MCAT. They're not even getting the opportunity to take classes that they choose yet. So that's when we start to see the GPA changes, because in 11th and 12th grade, I mean, I worked as a high school teacher for 10 years and an assistant principal in high school for 2 years. I have seen kids make this huge jump when they do get into CTE classes or AP classes or arts or things that, whatever it is, that they find their interest in. I've totally seen that click. It takes time. And that's why I think identifying kids as CCR in 10th grade, I think, is a mistake. I think we could use the phrase on track or approaching, but really they're not college and career ready in 10th grade. No student is. They are still 10th graders. They're still children. They're not mature. They're not all the way there. And that's not to say that all kids aren't mature, but they are 10th graders. It is our job, and LEAs and all of us on this call, to prepare them by the time they leave our schools. So that's not to say that we should not use data by the time they are in 10th grade and have a goal, because I understand the intent of Blueprint is to make sure our students aren't falling behind. And 10th grade is kind of like our own benchmark as an LEA to say your kids are on track. But I think that I went to this conference, ACTE, and I went to almost every session I went to was about CCR and career counseling, because I felt like that's where I needed to educate myself. Alabama, I went to a fabulous presentation on their CCR and career counseling. And Alabama is a state that I know has been mentioned somewhere in some of our, whether it was that empirical study or it was referenced in MSCE's latest discussions on CCR, I believe. They had a great framework. It's on their website. And they have 9 ways that a student can demonstrate CCR. And one of those ways is to be a CTE completer. So we have a lot of great ideas. I just think the timing of what we're doing is not aligning and could inadvertently put a barrier up that we've been talking about from the beginning. So I know I said I was going to be quick, and that wasn't quick. I just feel like I'm going to repeat that every time that I think that these are things that we need to bring up, because that's part of why we're on this committee. That could be an unintended consequence by that timing of that 10th grade. And if there is any way that we can if that could be evaluated. So I'm gonna get off now.
Well, I just want to remind everybody, thank you, Robin. No, all excellent. And I'm trying to capture as much of this and all the comments that emerge on these calls. They go into the grist, they're grist for the mill for what Pillar 3 subcommittee then submits to AIB in response to their queries for feedback from throughout the state and from various constituents and stakeholders. So this is not just going to end in this call. So thank you very much for excellent feedback on all fronts. Olivia, how should we wrap toward the conclusion?
Well, it's interesting because I honestly feel like we're just getting started.
I know.
We didn't talk about success metrics as it relates to career counseling. I want to discuss some more as it relates to the community colleges and their involvement as it relates to career counseling. And so what I will say is we do have a calendar throughout this year where we are going to be discussing other pieces. And so our January meeting is supposed to really focus on some success benchmarks and any questions or anything as it relates to LEAs on the plans that LEAs have to submit. And so I think that I appreciate all of our guests that were here today. I think each person brought a great vantage point. And I think that I'm sure, want to extend invitations to some of our future meetings, because we're going to kind of dissect some of our different post-CCR pathways and the support pathways in different meetings. And so I think that this is a great representation. I think that, extending invitations to some of these other more specific meetings may also be helpful, because I feel like everyone had more to say. And some folks, didn't get to say as much. And so I'm interested to hear.
Thank you. That's a good point. And I just echo that and wonder whether Rachel may have final thoughts, because she's posted some things in the chat.
Thanks, Dave. I know you guys were wanting to wrap up and I didn't want to take up any more airspace, but I did just want to share that I think you all are raising really good implementation challenges that we need to think through and work through. And if they are ultimately barriers to achieving the blueprint's vision and the intent, then, that is exactly what the AIB has said. Like, we want to give it our best shot at implementing it the way it's been envisioned. And if it's not working, and we have evidence to that effect, some type of evidence, then, they're open to considering changes. So I just wanted to share that. But the first step is to see if we've done all we can do and all the best thinking around implementing it as it was intended. And I also wanted to just give a shout out to Christy about the community colleges supporting career counseling, because I think sometimes I hear some community college folks say, why are we in the career counseling partnerships? And it's like, that is exactly why. And so thank you for saying that. Of course, the community colleges have a role in it. So thank you.
Olivia, I just wanted to point out, I know we didn't get through like all of our agenda and not all of our guests got to share as much. I would be open if we needed to fit in another meeting after the break. I know most of us are going on a break, but if that's something we wanted to figure out at some point to bring them back, I'd be more than happy to look at my calendar to address the things we didn't get to.
Thank you so much. I think that if you guys know me, I really like to start and end on time. And so one thing I think that we can do via email is take a look at our calendar for the year, because we do have some areas where we already have discussed taking a deeper dive into some of the areas that we've already brought up. And so I think we can take a look at that to see if there's anything, if we need to adjust or invite folks back to a meeting. We can do that then.
Well, thank you all. It's a good meeting to end on as we head into the break.
Absolutely. I'm excited. Like, I want to meet, to Robin's point, it's like, I want to meet tomorrow. I want to see, what are we going to do?
There's a lot more to say.
Thank
You guys
very
have a
much,
great,
everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
absolutely. Thank